Here's our third and final fictional situational example. Let's suppose you're competing against a small DGS company that has a low price point. There are several of these companies out there. Some have a long track record of being in the industry, but yet they're very small. Their customer service is going to probably be excellent because they don't have that many customers, and their price point might be much lower than yours. And for some of these companies, their product was built from the ground up for data governance and stewardship. So let's take a look at how we would compete against somebody like this. The strength. They have a low price point, and that may be very attractive to a buyer, especially if your buyer is a small to medium-sized organization. This is going to be a big advantage, especially if your price point is 50, 60, 200, 300% higher than theirs. That's a big example. That's a big strength of theirs. So how do we counter this strength? Possibly our DGS can be sold by module and by number of users. This could be a way that we lower our price point to negate this strength. Great opportunity to do that. Let's look at a vulnerability of this vendor. So a small DGS company, they're going to have a limited research and development budget, along with limited support and a limited sales staff. Maybe even the executives of the company are involved in the sale. Illustrate. So here's how you take advantage of that vulnerability. Illustrate the stability that your DGS has in the marketplace. That, hey, this smaller company, they could be bought out by a larger company just to roll their customers into that larger DGS company's software. That won't happen to us because if somebody did buy us, they're not going to be getting rid of our software because we have over 100 buyers using it today. That could be a way to exploit the instability of these smaller companies. Another example, and there could be, and there are multiple vulnerabilities. Gap example. Most of these types of vendors, the smaller DGS vendors, they just can't invest in leading edge tech like artificial intelligence and machine learning. So one of the ways we can exploit this gap in their stack is to say, hey, AI and ML offer the promise to vastly simplify many of the time-consuming data stewardship tasks. Maybe we've already implemented some of this capability into our product stack. We can certainly start selling to, hey, here's the advantages this gives you today, but boy, when you see the advantages it'll give 1 year, 2 years down the road, it'll make all the difference in the world. So it's a great example of, for a smaller vendor, they probably can't invest significantly in these kind of technologies. So this is just, again, a fun fictitious example of a positional assessment. The strengths of our competition, how we're going to counter those, and then how we're going to exploit their vulnerabilities and their gaps. Let's finish out the positional assessment. We need to list out the top strengths of our DGS. Honestly, what are they, especially in this particular competition? This is the functionality that you believe truly differentiates your product in the sales opportunity and overall in the marketplace. We also need to list out the vulnerabilities of our DGS. I'm sorry, I just went through the vulnerabilities of the competition. We have to do this as well. These are the functions, when I say vulnerabilities, that don't work as well as your competitors, especially in a particular sales opportunity. We also have to list out the gaps that we have with our software. Again, this is the functionality that we don't have, because we need to be able to defensively sell against our vulnerabilities and our gaps. Now that we've gathered our information, assessed our position, it's time for strategy definition. The goal of strategy definition is to advance our sales position. Wherever we are at, our goal is to advance. So let's go through some of the basics. Again, need to make sure we know the buyer's purchasing process. We need to create a plan that fulfills that process with due dates next to each task. Here's a key learning point. Things can and do go wrong. Make sure that you set your internal due dates at least a few days before the buyer's due dates. So, key concept here. By now, we should understand the buyer's purchasing process. For many buyers, most I should say, there will be due dates attached to certain tasks and milestones. We need to create our own internal project plan with our own due dates. We need to anticipate proactively some things are going to go wrong. So set those due dates at least a few days or a couple days before the buyers. I'll give you an example. If you are a buyer and you come up to me and say, hey, David, here's an RFI. Can you get this to me? When can you get this to me? Let's assume I think, based on my schedule and my current workload, I can get it done in a couple of days. I'm going to look at that buyer and say, would 4 days from now meet your requirements? Because that would work great in my schedule. 90% of the time, that works just fine. Even though my internal due date for it is 2 days, I'm going to put it in my schedule and plan for it and execute on it for a 2-day delivery. Although I have 4 days, I do this commonly. It is rare when I tell a buyer that I will have something ready on a particular day that I deliver it that day. It's typically the day before or 2 days before. I always want to work ahead. Second thing is, when defining your strategy, just the basics, and I've shared this with you before, you cannot be all things to all people. You need to have 2 or 3 key themes of your proposal. These themes are the ones you're going to emphasize over and over again. If you have a lot of referenceable clients, I would shout that from the rooftops. And I'll give you more on this. Let me give you some ideas of themes, but this is a good beginning on the basics of strategy definition. So what are some of the key themes we may want to use? Well, here's a big list. I probably know, so I was going to say I don't know what software you sell. However, if I did know, I would probably be able to tell you exactly which of these themes would be strengths of it. However, since I'm not in front of you right now, I don't know what you're selling. So let me give you some examples of key things. I mentioned earlier, if you have a long, strong track record of success, I would make sure people know that. I would include referenceable customer names as much as I can. I could tell you, as a services company, we have almost a dozen direct client quotes about the value of working with us. If I'm selling to you, you're going to learn about them pretty quick. Hey, maybe some analysts or experts have ranked you or think positively about your software. Include that. If that's a competitive advantage, definitely. Locations. Maybe you have a corporate office, maybe it's your headquarters, located in the same general area of the buyer. This is really significant in federal sales. If you don't have a boot on the ground in Washington, D.C., going to be hard to make a sale there. Pricing and software as a service modules. I've mentioned this before. Possibly that's your advantage. Buyer industry expertise. So we may have specific industry knowledge of our buyer's industry. If you have some people in your company who are experts in financial services and you're selling to financial services, get them involved in the sale. We need those SMEs. This is really critical in federal sales. I've shared with you stories before. We get pulled in to federal sales really from a couple avenues. Sometimes a third party will ask to partner with us because of our deep industry knowledge. and when I say industry, I mean data governance industry knowledge. Other times, a federal agency will say, well, we need someone to partner with. Who can we go to? So even though we don't have an office in DC, they'll look at us and they'll look at some of our non-federal competitors. Well, guess what? We have this giant book of federal business that we've had over our tenure. I'm going to throw that and ram it down the throat of our competition at every chance I get. Because in a federal sale, that'll make the difference. So when you can bring in industry expertise that resonates with the buyer, do it. That's going to be an advantage. Maybe you have the ability to scan the metadata from the buyer's data sources. That's a great advantage. Maybe your software has the ability to manually tag, but better's automatic tagging the metadata as it relates to things like PII, PHI, CCPA, etc. Maybe your software gives you the ability to assign data rules based on the metadata tagging. So automatic rule assignments if our automated tagging sees PII or PHI. That's another great theme that you may want to focus on if that will resonate truly with the buyer. AI and ML, the ability to automatically assign data elements to business terms or tag data elements using AI and machine learning, it could be a very powerful theme. If you think that's going to resonate with your buyer, go for it. Data lineage, both forward and backwards, could be a key theme you want to emphasize. Data, although it's really metadata, discovery and search capabilities. I can tell you in my experience, when I have a partner, a software partner, that can highlight a term in an email or in a spreadsheet or in a Word doc, and then we can hotkey and immediately get a business metadata definition of it or look it up in our data catalog, that's the kind of stuff I like to show in a demo. That's going to be compelling. Maybe supporting advanced analytics. Advanced analytics, one of the key drivers in our industry. And having good business metadata that you can integrate directly on analytical reports could give you a significant leg up on your competition, because some of the vendors in their space, their meta model is so closed and the APIs are so limited that we can't push those business metadata definitions into Tableau or business objects or some front-end tool. Metadata security. I have to tell you, while buyers do care about metadata security, this is the metadata we're holding in our tool. Typically, this is going to be Department of Defense or intelligence community kind of opportunities. But maybe security is a really big issue, so maybe that could be a theme, but typically it isn't. What if the buyer you're selling into has a significant DQM, data quality management team, and maybe they're the decision maker? Now you want to show your DQM support capabilities and make that a key theme of your offering. Maybe you have a whole module dedicated to DQM. I know a few of you do. Those are the kind of things that can make and break the whether you win or lose. Data stewardship workflows, my goodness, how many times have I talked about them? Same with data stewardship collaboration options. That could be, again, another great winning formula for you. And then soft concepts like customer service, friendliness, and tons more. But these are the kind of themes that I would, if as a DGS seller, that I would look to target 2 to 3 of these that become your differentiating factor in the competition. So I hope this was helpful. I hope as I went through that list, you were saying, we're really good at that, or we're really good at that, or oh, this could work in this opportunity. Because guess what? Not every opportunity will you have the same themes. When I'm selling into an account, I am going to tailor the themes based on the information I gathered.